Hello everyone, welcome to another Sunday. Before we begin, I'd just like to remind everyone the importance of using headphones. Low frequencies will not play through your cell phone or your laptop. So headphones is the way to go. Besides, there's 3D processing, sounds moving in various places. Sometimes I'm directing those places to be in specific structures of the brain. In addition, the headphones and the binaural beats cause this synchronicity of the hemispheres. And so we're trying to synchronize the hemispheres to open a doorway to where epiphanies take place and higher information. And we're attempting to synchronize everybody's brainwaves together in a massive mind link. We now have almost 8,000 people following us. I do have a couple of announcements. Number one, in the next 2 weekends, I am teaching my biotuning training workshop, and that is Saturday and Sundays for the next 2 weekends. So that means that I will not be doing this live broadcast on Sunday at 12:30. I'm going to be moving it to Tuesday at 12:30. So not this coming Tuesday, but the Tuesday after next weekend is when I will see you again. And I know that that's a weekday and some people work, so we're just going to have to do what we can do. But for those 2 weekends, I will be holding it on Tuesday. So that's next weekend, Sunday the 26th. I will not be here. I'll be on the Tuesday after. And Sunday, August 2nd, I will not be here. I'll be the Tuesday after. But the following Sunday, August 9th, I'll be back on Sundays at 12:30, as usual. In addition, I've been invited to have my own show on the national network, the Awake TV network. So I'll have another, I think, 6,000 or 7,000 people there. And if you want to go and check that out, it's like a channel of spiritual innovators, science innovators, people in this field that we're talking about, who all have shows of pretty amazing stuff. So I suggest you check it out. Here's where you go: www.awaketvnetwork.live. That's where you can find me. That's going to begin in August at some point, but I'm not sure exactly what the date is or what the time is. So as soon as that is rectified, which will happen in the next few days, I'll post that on my social media sites. And for those of you who want to follow me on social media, I'm on all of the platforms. Search for me with Dr. Jeffrey Thompson. It's the same for all of them. Let's see, Instagram is at Dr. Jeffrey Thompson. So today we're talking about the origins of sound healing, of sound influence for all of us. You know, the probably the most profound influence that all of us have, as I've mentioned before, is the first experience that we ever have, and that's when the first 5 senses come online at about 16 to 24 weeks in the womb. We do have in the womb the only senses that we have in the womb are sound and hearing, sound and vibration sense through our body, amplified through the water. If you remember, sound travels through water 5 times better than it does through air. And the size of the ear and the size of the eardrum related to the sounds around it would make all the sounds appear to be slowed down for our perception. So heartbeat sounds and water sounds and gloopy bloopy sounds from the large and small intestine, all of these sounds would seem to be slowed down a lot. So this first 9 months initiation that we all share in the womb is probably one of the deepest, most profound influences that any of us have, that we all share together. This idea that floating in amniotic fluid, weightless, surrounded by these sounds amplified through the water. The mother's diaphragm just above us would sound slowed down, and when you take respiration sounds and slow them down by that much, it sounds pretty much like the ocean coming in and going out. So that's the reason why I use 3D ocean recording so much in my private session work with patients, because it's one of the deepest influences for waking up the deep levels of the collective unconscious mind within me. We know that within that same experience, when we are experiencing these sounds from the womb, the Om sound is very close to coming from that same place in ourselves. At some point there is, because our eardrums are so small, we are picking up these extremely low frequency vibrations that are impacting the mother's body and impacting through the water and amplifying into our eardrums. And I really think that that's where the original kind of droning Om-like sound comes from, at the deepest level of our unconscious experience, and why it tends to be one of the most primal sounds from any culture on earth, is this idea of the Om, that sound, that kind of sound. We know that in various cultures, the idea of droning, in particularly Indian music, which I studied deeply. I played sitar in the 60s and got into a deep study of Indian music. The sitar has 7 strings on the top of these curved frets, and underneath are 13 strings tuned with pegs all up and down the side of the neck of the sitar. And those strings, those 13 strings, are tuned to harmonic ratios of the 7 strings above. So when you play a certain raga with the 7 strings above and you pull those strings to hit other notes, the 13 strings underneath will sing out all by themselves. Certain of those strings will sing out depending on which note you're hitting through sympathetic resonance. So this idea of tones and sympathetic resonance is a big part of Indian music. There are different ragas for different times of day and different seasons, and the tunings of the strings all change. But there's the 4-string tambura in the background that's droning this tone like we're hearing right now. And that tuning sequence is, we have a tonic note, so one of the strings of the tambura is tuned to that note, and then the 2 other strings are tuned to an octave lower of that note, and the 4th string is tuned to a harmonic 5th. And a harmonic 5th relationship to a fundamental tone is a golden section ratio. So if you remember the previous live stream where we talked about sacred geometries, and in particular the golden section ratio and the spiral, it's the relationship of something plus 1.618. So by having the tambura droning these 4 notes, bum, 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 we have the octave relationships and the harmonic 5th relationship that is sparking subconscious pattern recognition of the harmonic 5th golden section ratio mathematical proportion that consciousness used to design this proportions of this body. That's all very kind of profound stuff. So as we go into further renditions of what happens in various cultures, where we have ancient prehistoric cultures, and those prehistoric cultures with using drums and in particular drums and the whole shamanic thing. Why?
I don't know. They said there wasn't any sound.
I'm going to play some music here. It sounds like people are not hearing music, so let me turn that on. Oh, it's disappeared.
Oh, it's not in there.
Oh, no, here it is, right here. Desktop audio.
Let me test.
And I'm raising up the volume level.
Keep it up for a second.
Technical difficulties. So I'm hoping people can hear that sound.
Yeah, it's not. I think I know why.
Okay, Shay to the rescue. Shay to the rescue. So
Yeah.
let's have a look.
Just a second here, you guys. Let's see what we got. I think it's because maybe the audio driver changed.
Does show it here.
Yeah, I see it there too. But maybe it's this one. Yeah, you think it'd be coming out of there. Maybe that's why. Let's make sure all of these have audio. Must have been
The 6 was not on the
Okay.
top there.
I don't know if let me go listen. Keep it playing.
All right, so I'm going to keep this kind of playing in the background.
Yeah, you got sound.
All right, so sorry about that, folks. So once again, the idea that ancient cultures with, in particular, drumming, which tends to reiterate this whole idea of the heartbeat, which is one of the more profound influences that we have in the womb, is mother's heartbeat. And remember, the size of the eardrum would make that heartbeat seem to be extremely large and booming and slow. But this idea of drums as one of the first profound methods for changing consciousness. And when we examined that, I happen to have my little drum here, and just so that I can, kind of get myself into the mood, I have to have my little shamanic hat here. What do you think? I also have a whole bunch of beads, but I don't think I'm going to bother to put those on. However, I've done extensive studies of this idea of the shamanic drum practices, and taken recordings of these drums and checked out what speed these drums are going. And that speed right there is about 4.5 to 5 cycles per second. And 4.5 to 5 cycles per second is a theta brain pulse. And theta is where you go when you're dreaming. And dreaming sleep is where your brain goes when you are accessing your emotions, when you're healing your emotions. And why? Why is that? Because theta dreaming is an emotional event. Dreaming is an emotional event. Things that are happening into my dreams are affecting me emotionally. I'm being chased by the boogeyman. I'm having a nightmare. Or I'm having a love affair. I'm having a wet dream. It's everything in between. It's true creativity of a whole world with all the world laws and everything else, and doing it so perfectly that I don't even know it's a dream. So that's creativity. So theta is where all creativity takes place, and it's also where emotions happen. So when you have the best creativity, the best art, the best music, the best whatever, from a creative state, it's when you're closely aligned with your emotions. The greatest composers, Beethoven and Brahms and Schubert and Chopin and Mozart, had the ability to go to an emotional realm, be infused with that emotion, and pull music out of that state. And when any of us heard that music, we would be teleported to the same emotional state where that music came from. That's the sign of a great artist, is to pull from that. Never from a mental attitude of trying to create an effect or trying to create a hit. It's purely a marriage with your muse from the higher planes. So back to this idea of the drums, and further back into history, where the Egyptians used all kinds of musical instruments of various types to heal and to soothe. Most of these cultures all had music as a way of spirituality, a way of waking up. They were usually a big part of the temple, part of the sacred traditions, part of the healing traditions. Also, these places like, you would see ancient cultures like Egypt would use spaces, architectural designed acoustic spaces, like in the pyramids, where we have things like the king's chamber and the queen's chamber. These are precise measured spaces with a certain type of echo pattern. Certain things happened in these spaces. The spaces were aligned in a certain way in relation to the architectural pyramid design, which had energy focusing power, and that focusing power would focus directly into these zones. But as we, could see from all of the depictions in Egypt, how much attention was paid to musical instrumentation and music related to healing. Pretty amazing, just amazing stuff. They even had a specific god that was related only to healing. And that was then in the Chinese tradition, we had the Qigong Masters. Look at this here. The Chinese image for music and for medicine is all very similar. It's the same base with just these two things on top. Music, and here's the music symbol here with two things on top, which makes medicine. There was ways of using energy, resonance, affect the electromagnetic fields in the meridians. There is a flow of qi through the different meridians, through the 5 elements, and each of those was assigned with characters, a color, a phlegm type, a personality type, a sound type. In Qigong, when I was at the California Institute for Human Science, we did they were doing an experiment, a research experiment for a company that created something called the Qigong machine, or the Qi machine, and they had taken measurements of these Qi masters doing a healing session on someone, and in those healing sessions, they would be putting their hands close to your body, and the hands would resonate, actually shake. And they took measurements of that motion of the Qigong Master's hands, and they reproduced that as a transducer in a handheld device that created this odd kind of low frequency vibration that kind of was a randomized kind of a thing. And they were using this at California Institute for Human Science. We're measuring this to see if it actually did have an effect on the qi energy in the acupuncture meridians, using a device that I had mentioned before called the AMI machine, the acupuncture meridian identification device that could map the qi energy of the meridians on a computer and get a printout. And they definitely could show that a 20-minute treatment with this handheld kind of speaker on your chest for 20 minutes definitely would raise the qi energy right up to the top of its value. Everybody went to lunch. Me and some of my students realized they had this machine next door. I wanted to see it, so we went and stole it, brought it back to my office, turned my sound table upside down, taped it to the sounding board of that table, and taped microphones onto the sounding board of the table, and fired that thing up and recorded it onto and burned it onto a CD. So we had a 20-minute Qigong as a sound on a CD. Then we put that CD in a player next door in my sound chair that has speakers and stereo spread throughout your body. And now we could play it through your whole body, not just a little place on your chest. And we did the AMI measurement, and we could see that we could boost the qi energy right to the top of its scale within 5 minutes instead of 20, because we're infusing it into the entire body. I recognized something about that sound, and the sound of that Qigong machine was gnawing at me, and eventually it popped in. That was very close to the sound of elemental gold. Elemental gold is very similar. It's this randomized blah, 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 kind of a sound. So we hooked a person into the sound chair with the AMI machine, and we played the sound of elemental gold. And within 2 minutes, the qi energy was completely right off the scale. I will return to this story at a future date, because where it went from there had to do with the treatment for AIDS. And I will discuss that when I get into the portions of these live streams where I begin to discuss specific conditions and how sound is used in our clinic for treating various kind of things. So the Chinese meditation gongs, this is a whole other healing mechanism and changing consciousness mechanism that has been used for thousands and thousands of years. I actually had a personal experience with this, where I met the #1 top Gong master in Taiwan. That was quite a trip. I've spent quite a bit of time in Asia. Taiwan, I have a 10-year visa for China, although that's all very weird right now. I've been to South Korea and Shanghai and Taiwan and Shenzhen and a bunch of different Chinese cities, and spent a lot of time in Taiwan for developing my sound techniques in Asia, which is a very good culture for what I'm doing. So my contact person who manages things for me there, aside from my son who lives there, except he's trapped here because he came here on a trip and then the world closed down, so he's been stuck here ever since. But he manages my business there, along with a really wonderful lady named Stacy. She's been the one who's been there for years and years, managing everything for me there. I don't know what I would do without her. And she was the one who orchestrated this trip way out into the mountains of Taiwan, where we went up these narrow roads up into the mountains, and this really is rainforest there. It's jungle. It's almost prehistoric. And way the heck out in the middle of no place, where we go across this bridge, across a huge ravine with a giant river way down at the bottom. And on the other side, we come to this place up here in the upper left corner. This is the master gong maker's place, and that's the road that kind of goes up to his place. Once you get up there, this fence is all made from gongs. You can see them here. They're all gongs. His shop is filled with gongs. He has a huge gong. He's got gongs that are 6 feet in diameter. This is him here. Me, Shay, my son. This is his son, who manages the kind of shop that he has, which is on the ground floor. This is a 3-story building. He lives above, and his gong shop is below. This is him here making the gong for me. This is the gong that I got when I was there. We were going through this place and hitting various gongs, and back in the back room they had the giant, really huge gongs. These gongs that are this big here, and that one right there is the one that I bought. But these gongs here, there was 20 or 30 of them in the back, and I'm looking at them and longingly, and he says, we can play any of those you want if you want to hear them. So I said, sure. He said, which one do you want to hear? And there was a whole bunch of them all stacked up 3 or 4 deep, except for one that was all by itself. So I said, well, let's do that one. So he hung it up, and I hit that gong, where you hit the gong here on this raised area right here with these heavy mallets. And the sound that came out was this deep, throbbing, low-frequency bone rattling, borderline somewhere between delta and theta pulse. And I had one of those experiences where something came out of me and said, I have to have this gong. And then my rational mind said, excuse me? I mean, how much does that thing weigh? And how much does it cost? And how much would it cost to try to ship that back to the United States? And the big part of me was going, those are, go away. I mean, that has nothing to do with this. I have to have this gong. So, I went over to Stacy. I said, I have to have this gong. She said, okay. And she talked to him. The next thing you know, I'm buying this gong, and she's doing the paperwork. And the next thing you know, 3 to 4 weeks later, it arrived in my house. And there it is. If you can see right there, that's it right there behind me. What an amazing experience to have this amazing instrument that was handmade by this master gong maker. As a matter of fact, the bowls, of Tibetan bowls, I have another amazing story. But one of my oldest friends, a Kurdish man named Manuch Movlai, he and I became deep essence friends because we were both at this esoteric school in upstate New York, the Gurdjieff School. We became very close. Later, after those years were over and I went off to chiropractic school, he went off and started one of the world's largest museum-quality Oriental carpet companies in the world, and had hundreds of people spread out through the world looking for priceless antique carpets, 200-300 years old, priceless carpets. He began to, every time I'd go and visit him in Oakland, he would give me a carpet. So back here is one of the carpets he gave me, that red one right there. And I have carpets all over the floor in my house. You can't see them through this broadcast, but upstairs in his attic, he had 300 Tibetan bowls that were gathered from all over the world, some of the finest bowls. And then he said, well, I've got so many bowls, take some of them. So I went up and I played them, gathered about a dozen that were excellent ones. And the way you can tell an excellent one, like here's one right here, is the bowl will have a nice tone because of the alloys, and it will have a pulse, and the pulse is a brainwave pulse. And I explained this in one of the live broadcasts before, where the curvature here, the diameter here is different than the diameter here, and the different than the diameter here. So we've got 3 or 4 bowls in there. Each one of them creates a frequency. Those frequencies interact and create a binaural beat within a single source. Basically a monophonic binaural beat. A binaural beat within a single sound source. So if we play this, delta in that particular bowl. So you can go and you can check the bowls out by rubbing them, listening to the sound of that pulse, and you can time the pulse by counting by seconds. So that's kind of how you do it with the drum. For instance, I have the drum here. It's like 1 and 2 and 3, 1 and 2, 1 and 2. So 1 and 2 seconds and 3 seconds and 4 seconds and 1 and 2. So that's about 4 to 5 seconds, 4 to 5 hertz, 4 to 5 drum beats per second, and that's a theta pulse. You do the same thing with the bowl. You can rub the bowl and you can count 1 and 2 and 3 and see how many pulses happen within that period of time between 1 and 2. It tells you the hertz per second. So these traditions of, like for instance, these tin shas, these are 2 bells that are slightly out of tune that create a binaural beat. As I said before in a previous broadcast, the small dome is a bell and the large one is a bell. So the two small domes are interacting with the beat. The two large ones are interacting with the beat. The small one and the large one, and this small one and this large one are also interacting. That's 4 beats. It's a brain pattern. These guys even knew about the brain pattern. They also knew about the binaural beats and changing consciousness. This was all intuitive, but the science behind it is there anyway. If we go back to the Greeks and Pythagoras here, and the Pythagorean experimentations with bowls and glasses filled with water, stringed instruments that could be tuned, the sacred monochord flutes. The Greeks were famous for using sound in healing. Then we have the Christian traditions of the Gregorian chants, and the whole idea of the essential, the Essenes and the Gnostics, and the esoteric Christianity, which I had talked about last time with Lindisfarne. The shamanic traditions have stood the test of time all the way back to the ancients through the American Indian culture. This idea of the shamanic journey, where we can begin to pound a drum at a theta speed in a ceremony, let's say at night around a fire, and we start pounding this drum at a 5 hertz frequency, and within a few minutes you're traveling into a dream, but you didn't go to sleep first, which is a classic definition of a trance state. And it's a shamanic journey. We're putting you into a specific type of dream state. The Aborigines call it dream time. And you're going there for a specific purpose. You're going there to meet your totem animal, or to climb a mountain, or go into a cave, meet the shaman who has a secret to give you. And of course, all of this is the language of the unconscious mind. Dream imagery, surreal type of manufactured mind dream imagery, which is essentially coming from the default mode network zone. Those 4 zones that are tightly synchronized, that forms my sense of self, which we had discussed before. We had a whole live stream on the default mode, and we listened to that soundtrack. So the shamanic tradition has really stood the test of time and has woven itself through pretty much every culture. Every culture has had a drum thing, and the drum things always have to do with changing consciousness. The idea that these traditions of going into magical zones and meeting the entity of yourself at a deep unconscious world that is moment by moment being created within yourself, your own separate world, mystical world, where the secrets and the answers are. People have been trying to help get us to this part of our world where, in metaphor, we can work on the deepest issues of our lives. It's the world of visualization. It's the world of affirmations. It's the world of entering to that dream time, that dream space, with a technology. And in this case, it's drumming technology. It's brain entrainment drumming technology that's ancient and intuitive, and now we have ways of using science to measure that with EEG, with sophisticated types of precise electronic equipment for producing sound and pulses and beats and binaural beats and all the rest. Now we can quantify that, and we can really make it precise. We can find the precise place in your brain where your theta doorway is that opens the magic door to your deepest unconscious zone. And we can measure where that is, and we can place you there with a high degree of precision. The things that we're doing in these live streams are more generic. but generic still holds the water because we're able to capture 80% of the people on the bell curve. The 20% of the people out on the edge, we can capture most of those as well by changing the speed of the binaural beats, making them a little faster and a little slower throughout the whole range that we're trying to go to, say theta, so we catch everybody. So we can use science on the bell curve to expand the bell curve from the 80% response to almost 100% response by varying the brainwave frequencies throughout them, which is what we have on the soundtrack that we're going to listen to today. Where we're going today is a sound shamanic journey. So these realms that I'm talking about of going to these magical places inside of ourselves is and using drum technology is precisely what we're about this time. So that being said, your headphones are essential for this. Another interesting thing is my intro music that I play each week is the soundtrack that we're going to listen to today. So you'll hear a familiar beginning that you hear at the beginning of each of these live streams. And now you will hear the rest of where that goes, that shamanic journey. And this one lasts for 21 minutes. That's 3 sevens. That's 3 octaves of 7. 7, the mystical number. So the mystical mysteries is where we're going today. So here we go. Headphones, eyes closed. thank you all. I want to put up the address where you can get this piece that we just listened to. scientificsounds.com/origins. The next time will be not on Sunday, it'll be on the following Tuesday. And I will discuss a bit further of the idea of what we talked about today and how that is now being used in modern times by various innovators and researchers and sound scientists like myself. I'll be discussing what my own system is, the biotuning system, and some other pioneers in the field, and what their take is and how they're approaching it. So please join me again next time. Thank you all very much for being here with me. Peace and joy and love and health. Take care of yourselves, and we will see you next time.